Good evening, everyone. Seem to be the only one here at the moment. I just heard from Wilson. He's finishing up his dinner, so he'll be on here in a few minutes. And Paolo should be here too. He said this afternoon he'll be here, so he'll probably be showing up in a few minutes too. But meanwhile, I'll just sit here and chat to you. I got a ton of comics to show off tonight because I didn't go to the comic shop last week until Saturday, and this week I went on Wednesday, so I've got 2 weeks worth of comic books sitting here. There's Paolo right there. Let's add him on. Good evening, Paolo. How are you doing?
I am recovering from a nasty fit of cough and with the help of whiskey.
Okay. Wilson's finishing his dinner. He sent us a message, so I hope he's having something good.
I had spaghetti for dinner.
I had macaroni and cheese, some leftover baked macaroni and cheese.
We don't have mac and cheese in Portugal.
You don't. Good evening, Comic Fiends, says Comic Crack. A nice Halloween themed good evening. I've got a whole bunch of comics here this week because I got 2 weeks worth since I didn't get to go until Friday last week.
Mm-hmm.
So I got a pile of them sitting here. Good evening, Tit Goblin. Got a bit of a longer drive ahead of me today. We'll be here listening in. Oh, okay. That's cool.
Define longer drive when you live in Manitoba.
Yeah, good question.
Or is it Winnipeg? I always get Manitoba and Winnipeg confused.
I don't know much about either of them to get them confused.
Okay, so there's British Columbia, there's Wilderness, then there's Alberta and Ontario.
Uh-huh.
And I never remember the order for Winnipeg, Manitoba, and Saskatchewan.
Yeah, I don't know my Canadian states very well. Provinces. I used to know them, but I've since forgotten.
When I was learning geography on my own, Winnipeg
30
is the
minutes. Winnipeg is the city. Manitoba is the province.
Okay, right. And then Saskatoon is the capital of Saskatchewan.
Uh-huh.
Probably the only city in Saskatchewan.
Oh, okay.
But when I was learning geography, because I liked learning list stuff, I didn't even have it at school yet.
I like maps.
Yeah, Nunavut did not exist.
What didn't exist?
Nunavut. It was made up. It's the eastern part of of the Northwestern Territories, which now are its own province.
Okay. Just got back from bin diving. New universe for 25 cents. You can have them. Manitoba is between Ontario and Saskatchewan. Okay.
Yeah, but Nunavut did not exist in the 1990s.
I'm trying to think of, because one day I was trying to figure out which U.S. state borders the most states. And New York is one of the ones that's up there. I think it had 5 between states and provinces. It had 5 different states bordering it. But I think the winner was Tennessee with 7. Tennessee has 7 states bordering it.
Nice.
If memory serves. I was like, whoa. But that's when I was learning my Canadian provinces a while. There's 2 Canadian provinces that border New York State, and I can't remember either of them right at this moment.
Well, they should be Ontario and Quebec.
Yeah, they must be. They're the 2 eastern ones.
You know that parallel line that's the official border throughout most of Canada in the U.S.
64-40 or fight. Not that one.
Yeah. But that only goes through the western states. Then it starts going down to the Great Lakes, and the majority of people in Canada actually live below that parallel. I think because they live close to the Great Lakes.
That 64-40 or fight was the campaign slogan of a presidential candidate. I forget which one. It was back when the Western Canadian-U.S. border still wasn't established.
Mhm.
No one quite knew where it was, and I think they just wanted the U.S. wanted to just extend the eastern border across 6440, whatever latitude and longitude that is, and that would have taken off a lot of Canada up there. And that was his campaign. He wanted to go. He was threatening to start a war with Canada over the western border. If cooler heads prevailed, and they just like extended the existing border that was over there. That's
Wilson
why it's
still
so straight across.
Yeah, Wilson still remembers high school geography.
The most neighborly states are Tennessee and Missouri. Each share a border with 8 states. I didn't realize it was 8. I don't remember Missouri's sharing that many.
Well, if you don't count Russia, which European country has the most borders? Because Russia has 16
so many borders.
Yeah, about 16 countries, I think. But Germany has borders with Denmark, Netherlands, Belgium, Luxembourg, France, Switzerland, Austria, and Poland, but not with the Czech Republic because the border with the Czech Republic is in Austria. I've heard some Americans say, I don't bother learning all the countries in Europe. It would be Europeans don't bother learning all the states in the US. And
Of course not.
It's a false equivalence.
Yeah.
Because the countries in Europe are independent and the American states are not.
Right.
Not knowing the US states is the same as not knowing the states in the Federal Republic of Germany.
Right.
Which are 13, if I'm not mistaken. But I don't know the names of most of them, especially because I knew better what states were when the West Germany and East Germany were separated.
Well, there's a famous episode of Friends where they do something where they say something about Americans can't even name all 50 states, and they have a thing where they try to name all 50 states, and they can't.
I might have some trouble placing Idaho and Wisconsin, but in the pointing them out in the map. But apart from that, I think I know where everything is.
Idaho's easy because Idaho and Montana make a face.
Okay.
And Wisconsin is over against the Great Lakes.
All right, because Wisconsin is close to Illinois, right? And then
it's those ones that are rectangular in the middle. That can go.
Yeah.
They don't have distinct borders. I was as I was waiting to come on, I was just finishing reading the Image Anthology. What issue we got here? Issue 5 or 6? Issue 7. It's going to be 12 of them. I got to say, I've been a little disappointed in this. Not that it's been terrible, but it hasn't been great. Like there's like in this issue we have there's a continuing story, The Blizzard, that's by Jeff Johns and Andrea Muti, that's running all throughout the whole series, and it kind of reads like a 48 whatever it is, a 60-page story cut up into 6 or 8 page chunks. It doesn't read like an anthology story. And then we've got like a witches story from Scott Snyder and Nathan and Jock, which reads like an ad for a bigger witches story. So some of the stuff they just give you, like there's a Noble Causes story in here, which is another series. It just kind of reads like an ad for Noble Causes. It just gives you a little taste of what Noble Causes is about.
Or used to be. I remember Noble Causes was years ago.
Yeah.
Is that a new story?
I think so. As far as I know, it's a new story. Family Gathering, Jay Faber, Ron Riley is the colors. Pardon me. Patrick. Oh, there's a bunch of people drawing it. One person. Wow. One person each draws a page in the Noble Cause. There's Patrick Gleason, Andres Pounce, Fran Bueno, John Somariva, Ray Anthony Height, Jamal Engel, Yadire Sinar Mahmoud Asrar, all draw 1 page each. That's weird.
Okay.
I didn't even notice that. It's like a bunch of the Noble Causes guys having fights and chatting.
Okay.
There's no real story there.
Do you remember that series that Top Cow did about superheroes and villains hanging out at a coffee shop? What was it called? Common Grounds.
I never read
And
that one.
it was a color remake with professional looking art of a black and white indie book, which Wizard had covered.
Ah.
And I have I bought the colored version at the time. At the time, I was looking to get into Astro City, but I hadn't yet. And Common Grounds looked enough like Astro City that would scratch that itch.
Okay. Yeah, I don't think I've ever read Common Grounds.
Mm-hmm.
Doesn't sound familiar. But the best story in it. Oh, there's also a who is this? Hack slash story.
Mm-hmm.
Where they're fighting Bloodstrike, and it's just a fight.
Bloodstrike.
Yeah, that's just kind of like, here's these two teams fighting each other. Okay, the most interesting story.
Please tell me if it's not drawn by Rob, it's at least drawn by one of his clones.
No, it's drawn by where is Hack Slash? It's called Hack Slash versus Image. Tim Steele and Stefano Caselli.
Okay,
those are the Hack Slash guys.
Okay, if you're drawing guys from Extreme characters from Extreme Studios, you should get somebody with a ridiculous style. It's mandatory.
It's another fight scene. Well, how many pages is it? 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 pages of a fight scene between them. And it's just kind of like, oh, okay. But this one is actually interesting.
The Portuguese-speaking comic book fan community has decided that it's no longer necessary to mock Rob Liefeld. We now embrace the ridiculousness. So now we, like the day in the village when the fool is crowned the king. We now embrace Liefeld like that.
I just ignore him mostly. Though I do follow him on Twitter. I think he's a good Twitterer.
Mm-hmm. I haven't listened to his podcast in a while.
I only listened to that one episode, and that's enough. I'm just not that interested in what he has to say. That's all it comes down to.
He's a good storyteller, but half of what he says, you can't believe it.
Yeah, there's the problem. And like I said, sometimes he just makes me go, you've got no self-awareness, none.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, liking Liefeld is a bit like being a fan of the Woodpeckers from Space song. It was bad, but it was from that period, and we like remembering that period.
Hey, if you like them, you like them. Mm-hmm. That's fine with me. I don't have to like them, Closer Part 1 by Kieran Gillen and Steve Lieber. Two guys I like. Was the most interesting story. It was like 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. This is an 8-page story. And the story is just of this woman who's coming in for a test. They're like, oh, you want to volunteer for a test? She's coming in for a test. Da-da-da. They put her in this glass. These scientists put her in this glass room with pigeons. And she has to stay in the room with pigeons for an hour, I think it is. And she has no idea why. We have no idea why. And it's just like a slice of life story kind of. And she's like, all right, I'm in here with pigeons. Then after she's in there, the hour, the scientists come in and mess, and it turns out what they were doing was counting the pigeons. Because they put her in a room with 50 pigeons. After an hour, there were 53 pigeons in the room. Mm-hmm. And it turns out there's some sort of, he says, we've been triangulating the disturbances. First it says, I've been charged to research some anomalies. They've mostly been localized in the city. We think they started 6 months ago. At first, people thought it was a hoax. Then they got increasingly impossible. I got brought in 3 months ago. We've been triangulating the disturbances, narrowing the search first to the city, then to the block. Evidence added up. We've got a theory. We believe they're localized to you. So weird. And this scientist, his mind is just blown. He doesn't know what to do because you can't put somebody in a room with 50 pigeons and then there are 53. And it doesn't make sense with any kind of, any kind of explanation he has. Truth often gets in the way of a good story. I think that's Rob's podcast. Yes. But that was the best story. This was the one story I really liked. Closer Part 1. No surprise because I like Kieran Gillen and Steve Lieber's work, but that was the one good story in this. And I don't think there's been a good story. Well, Dean Haspiel's is always good, but he gets one page at the end. So it's not like there's a ton of Dean Haspiel, but you can count on that one page to be good. So I have to say, overall, the Image anthology has been a disappointment. Mm-hmm. It was pretty good at the beginning, but that may just have been me wanting to like. But as it goes on, and as compared to, I was just talking with this, the Bad Idea comics that I've been working on just came out finally this week, and we've got, what is it? We've got Orc Island #1, and we've got Escape from Wyoming #1.
Escape from Wyoming.
Escape from Wyoming. and it's funny, despite the fact that I do the production on these and put them together, I don't actually read them until they're in final form. Because I'm busy looking at stuff and taking care of technical stuff on it. If I was actually to read them, that would just kind of distract me. So I always look forward, and it's like, I didn't know really what either of these was about until I finally read them. And I was like, oh, that's what all those pictures mean. But the way this relates to Image anthology is the Bad Idea comics all have backup stories. And this one, it's Arc Story. And this one, what's the name of this one? Powder Day. And they actually do a really good job with their 8-page backup stories. I gotta say, they're so much better because there's an art to doing an 8-page story. You can't treat it like a lot of my complaints about this is it just seems to be part of some of them seem to be just ads for other comics, and some of them seem to be just one part of a 60-page story chopped up randomly. Kind of like another one I got this week. Where is it? The New Great Gatsby issue #6. And this is clearly not meant to be a monthly comic. And I'm okay with that. It's clearly meant to be all read as because kind of it ends in the middle of scenes. But like I said, I'm okay with that because I know going in that this is clearly supposed to be a graphic novel, not a monthly comic. It's just that, here in the US, we put out comics monthly and then collect them. That way you can make some money. So I'm okay with this just being, chopped up what I show around 6 to a 180-page story chopped up into 20-page segments. I'm okay with that when it comes to something like this. When it comes to something like an Image comic, an anthology, I'm not as okay with it. Because this is supposed to, an anthology, you're supposed to kind of be able to read each individual story in it. And it may continue, it may not, but you're supposed to get some, you're not just supposed to go, oh, there's no more to this story. It just kind of ends. So that's the problem I have with this. Like I said, meanwhile, both of the backups in this were good. I enjoyed them. One backup was about animals taking over Noah's Ark. And the other was about guys pulling a heist in the middle of a snowstorm. A little 8-page heist story. But much better done 8-page stories than in the anthology. Have you ever read many? You probably don't get a lot of 8-page stories over there because everything comes over in big chunks, right?
The last time I bought an anthology,
There are not a lot of them to begin with. I mean,
well, I did buy an anthology that I've never got around to reading, and it was about 4 years ago.
Yeah.
And it was made over here by Portuguese authors, but I never got the idea. The idea about it wasn't even that you would read one story and then come back and read the next one. The book was designed so you could, a bit like it's an encyclopedia. You open up a story in the middle and you read it, and you come back and you read one in the beginning, but not necessarily the first. You can read the second, and then you can jump between the stories that you want to read. That was the idea about it,
right?
But I ended up not going through it. But so the last anthology I read, I can't even remember that.
Like Dark Horse Presents was an anthology I bought for many years through 3 volumes. And it's like especially in volume 1, you could always count on really liking at least one of the stories.
Mm-hmm.
The other 2 could be good to, there's usually one that you don't like, depending on your taste. But you could always count on a good story. And in this, so far in this Image anthology, I cannot count on a good story. Good evening, Wilson.
Good evening, my friends. How are you guys doing?
What is up?
We're doing all right over here.
We need to know, what did you have for dinner?
Yeah.
I ended up having Chinese food because it was the quickest. I had rib tips with totones because nothing's Chinese like Spanish food added to it.
And let's see, what were these? Now that I read them, I actually know what they're about. These are some Bad Idea comics came out this week.
Oh, okay.
I was just saying, even though I do the production on them, I usually don't read them as I'm doing the production because I'm busy doing the production. I'm busy looking at them. So it's when I finally read them, it's like I recognize all the pictures, but it's not like I've read it before. So it's like I never quite know what's going on. And this one has some nice art in it. Let me show you some of the art. There we go. Some interesting coloring. They do. Who's doing the art on this? Alberto Ponticelli, who does a nice job capturing this sort of futuristic but old city. And the story takes, but they're in this city, which is it's kind of a fantasy city, I guess you'd call it. There's some wash hanging on the line, and there's all these different types of people in it, all different covers. One of them's a half elf. I don't know what they all are, but this is like the poor part of the city, and it's written by Joshua Dysart, who's written a lot of stuff for Valiant that I've liked. New Valiant he used to write for. I think he wrote Harbinger. I really liked that one. And I think he wrote The Imperium, which I liked too. But it takes place kind of in this city. And then all of a sudden, they're in this poor part of this. The whole city is poor. And all of a sudden, these rich guys come down and are like, clear the city because it's time for our festival. So like all these rich priests come down on like these flying machines with sorcerers like shackled to it who make it fly. And they've got these, I forget what they call them, draves, who are just like sort of mindless people who they're the boots on the ground, the stormtroopers. They just start kicking anyone's ass who doesn't clear out the city. And so they could land their machines. And then our lead character is this yellow guy who they keep calling half elf. And he's like this thief guy who's trying to, he's like, I'm just going to steal from all the pilgrims who come here. It'll be good for me. But then it ends up is called Orc Island because as part of this ritual, the rich people have these orc skulls that artists paint, like as part of their big ritual, and there used to be heaps and heaps of orc skulls. Now there's only 3 that they can paint. So this guy hooks up with a crew who's going to go to Orc Island and steal a bunch of orc skulls. And this is a weekly comic too. Got all 4 issues out. So they'll be there the next 3 weeks. We'll have issue 2, 3, and 4 out. And I enjoyed this one. It was the art was good. The story was a lot of fun. And like I said, the backup was good. I'm enjoying the backups in these. They're a little pricey at $8 for 32 pages. But it's nicely done. There's always a good solid cover with varnish on it. It's better than what is this one that I got this week that I was really disappointed with the actual. Oh, this is the one. I bought a Mad Cave Studios book. And take a look at that waviness of it. Can you see the striations?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Oversaturated. I don't know if it's oversaturated or the paper is just because I've seen books because it's got what I assume is a rich black on the back. That could have oversaturated it because everybody uses Photoshop's default black, and that's not a really good idea, despite them saying it's the standard. It oversaturates books all the time. But I'm beginning to suspect the paper is just wavy too. I think the coating they put on the paper doesn't dry right. Because I've seen books completely wavy that don't look oversaturated to me. So I'm like, how can that be?
Is it just the cover, or is the book itself wavy?
It looks like it's just the cover on this one, so it may be that black on the back. Doesn't look as oversaturated on the inside. So this one, but I've seen books all the way through look that wavy. I've seen books that were like black like that all the way through, and that's oversaturation. But I've also seen ones that like none of this is wavy. So that's got to be a little bit on that black page, but that must be this rich black on the back. But the Mad Cave Studios has in the masthead 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9. That's 18, 19, 20, 21, 22, 23 people listed in their masthead. What this? Not Mike March. This must have been before he was hired. But I was like, how does Mad Cave Studios have 23 people working for it? They've got founder, CEO, senior vice president, publisher, chief financial officer, director of sales, marketing director, production manager, design director, senior editor, director of paper cuts, marketing manager, graphic designer, interactive media designer, audio visual production, accounting director, retail relations manager, executive assistant, retail associate, and office manager. I'm like, that's a lot of people to employ for a company I've barely heard of.
Mm-hmm.
It's amazing sometimes. But the comic itself was
and we don't know where their money comes from.
And the comic itself was only middle of the road.
Mm-hmm.
It was the story of these people who answered an ad to go on an all-expense paid cruise, and now they have to escape some island that is trying to kill them. You know, it's
very 80s.
Yeah, it's what is that? The Most Dangerous Game? That famous story where somebody's hunting a man on an island. Mm-hmm. That's been done with endless variations, and here it is being done again.
Oh, well.
What's the cover price?
$4.
How many pages?
Let's see. It seemed like a standard 32-page book. I think it is. Let's see. How many pages is the actual comic? 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 24 pages of new comic.
Oh, okay.
The covers are nice, nice little lush jungle cover. Here's next issue's lush jungle cover. The inside art is only just okay. Let's see who's doing it. Zach Thompson is the writer. Bailey Underwood is the artist. Warina Shadadiwa is the colorist. Russ Wooton, the letterer. Filia Ratukin is the cover artist. But, like I said, it was, I don't need another issue. It was solidly okay. But 23 people on the masthead.
I have not run into an issue of any of their issues in the wild yet.
This is the first
one. I haven't been out to buy comics, so that's the other thing, too.
I also saw a trade of that one we'd all heard of. What was the name of some an N name? Nottingham. There we go. I think that was like the one that people have heard of.
Oh, okay.
Hello, Wilson, says Comic Rack.
Hello, Comic Rack. Thank you.
Can you imagine if Marvel back in the day, they would list each and every one of the Ramirez Raiders in the
they got listed in Marvel Age. That's where everybody got listed in Marvel Age. That was it.
Yep, in Marvel Age, and then after that, what replaced it was I think it was Marvel Preview was kind of like the replacement for Marvel Age, and then there were some specials that replaced it. So like the Captain America special, which was penciled by John Byrne and inked by Joe Simon. I think that was the first book I was put into the Masterhead.
Ah, okay.
That book. Yeah, it's funny where I've had talk since I worked with so many independent companies on whose names should go in the book. Sometimes whose name should go in the press release and stuff like that. I figured if you're an artist on the book, from writer to letterer, everyone should be named.
Now, hold on. You mean the cover? Because that's the
no, I think in press releases.
Oh, press releases. Okay. Because I know there was a big thing about getting the colorists on covers too.
Yeah.
Like because now credits go on covers.
The credits on covers, I've always been ambivalent towards that because the cover is a marketing tool, and there are functions that there's no point in listing on the cover because they don't serve as a sales aid.
Right.
So even the inker may not be necessary to sell the book.
Right.
Me personally, I feel like you either name everybody on the cover or you don't put any names on the cover. That's the way I always felt about it, because adding the last names in a row, if it's part of the whole cover design, I think it's fine that you put all the names there, usually under the corner box. If it depends on the way it's set up. Yes,
it works fine, like on this.
Yes, so something like that, I think all the artists that worked on it should be put onto there. As far as who else should be in a regular credits page, I think as well as the editor and the assistant editor. And that's pretty much it. Yeah, because there are other places to put the rest
on the credits page here. They put everyone just because they got a whole page for it.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm. No, you can put, like, I think even the intern got credited in this one. Because why not? You got a whole page. You got a whole page of credits.
Right. If you design it like that, I think that's
right.
Fine.
You can see you put everybody's name on that when you got a whole page. Even that, this one, they got all this room here on the opening page. So why not, put everybody's name on the masthead? So that I got no problem with stuff like that.
Right.
Okay, so what the Brazilians did is they would put everyone in who works in any editorial capacity in this little small print here. This is the indicia page. Everyone is in here, including the guy in charge of the warehouse.
Okay.
but you would not be listed here. So
That's what Marvel did in Marvel Age. They just put everybody's name there.
right. So they started putting
Everybody in the bullpen got
so
credit.
yeah. So besides the writer, artist, and inker, you would get the the translator is listed here.
Yep.
And the translator is also the since it's a studio, they're also responsible for coloring and in lettering, because they get the pages in black and white in case they don't have color, at least back in the day. So the coloring would be done internally. But if you are the copy by, you get listed in that little fine print. Of course, at the time, nobody bothered putting names on the covers in the 80s.
That's it. When did they start putting names on the covers of comics? Was that the
Image.
90s, late 90s?
It's Image.
That's 90s.
Image?
Yeah.
Like Marvel and DC, when did they start?
What the Brazilians did, they had two names that if you put them on a cover, three names that if you put them on a cover, knowledgeable fans would pick the comic, and those were Frank Miller, John Byrne, and Alan Moore. But if nobody else, not even George Perez, not Chris Claremont, not Marv Wolfman, no point. If you're going to put something on a cover, and all the Brazilians always had a cover copy, if you're going to put somebody's name on it, they better help sell. Yeah. Otherwise, let's put something that sounds like an ad to the greatest epic ever. Put it on a cover, but unless it's John Byrne writing and drawing it, don't bother.
And Escape from Wyoming was pretty cool too. Let me give you a little look at this art here. More cartoony art in this one, but well done. And a pretty interesting story in that, and it's funny, it's like I didn't know anything that this was about until I read it. The concept behind Escape from Wyoming is out there in the universe, the whatever galactic civilizations there are, their worst criminals are in a prison on Earth. Now, Earth knows nothing about this. Somewhere out in the middle of Wyoming, underground, is this alien prison where they send the prisoners to live out their lives. It's a high security prison where the guards are like monks. They're a brotherhood of monks, and they don't even get to once you go there, you can't leave. Even the guards are there for life.
Oh, wow.
So all the worst criminals are there out in Wyoming, and one of the characters is this local Wyoming cop. And of course, what happened? And we've got a lead character who's a local Wyoming cop, and we've got another lead character who's an alien cop who was framed for whatever crime they had him do. So he gets sent to this prison too, but he's an innocent man. He's framed. He's ex-police out there in space. So what happens is something goes wrong in the prison. Things blow up, and these 2 or 3 high-value prisoners escape out into Wyoming. So now the brothers deputize this cop in order to bring him back, and that's kind of where but it was really well done and enjoyable. I liked the art in it. The characters were fun. I think it's going to be another 4-issue. Most of Bad Ideas stuff is 4 or 5 issues.
If I am in charge of an isolated prison for aliens, I'm not going to put it in the United States. Not even in Wyoming. I'm going to put that thing in Mongolia or something.
Escape from Mongolia. Well, maybe when they localize the comic. Jared, but I'm going to look out for your Machine Man logo comic for years back when I go hunting. Okay.
It's the M-Tech series, right?
What was that?
What was it? The M-Tech series, the one that was like with
the Machine Man. It was. Let me see. I've got it over here.
I think it was the M-Tech series because it was Machine Man. Wasn't Warlock part of that?
Warlock and Deathlock. Yeah.
Yeah. I think that was the time period it would have been from.
Mm-hmm. And Deathlock was a spinoff from Cable because it was that weird shield agent that he sent to capture Cable, and he fails and he has to be turned into a cyborg. So he's the new Deathlock, but he doesn't look like a regular Deathlock.
Right.
I like those stories.
It wasn't his spot.
Jose Ladron had a very interesting art style at the time.
1998 Cable Annual.
Yeah.
I might have colored that.
1998 Machine Man Bastion Annual. Let's see. Matter of fact, I think Carl Bowlers, who I worked with at Bad Idea, wrote these.
I think he wrote one of them or both of them.
Yeah, he. Let's see. Mike Higgins and Carl Bowlers. Kevin Tinsley colored this one. Yeah, these are the only logo, the only two logos I ever did for Marvel were Machine Man and Bastion.
Oh, Jared, tell Tit Goblin about your indie comic.
Oh yeah, I've got an indie comic. I published my own. Let's see. Carl Bowlers and Mike Higgins, colorist Matt Webb. Oh yeah, my friends and I published an anthology comic in 97/98. Kansas Thunder. I'll show you some copies of it. Have any copies back here? Oh, I have them out in the other room. You'll never find these. They're not many of them got out there. Hold on, I'm gonna have to go in the other room.
And I see that Tit Goblin had a question. Wilson, did you have anything you think I would find hunting in the bins? What would be out there from that time period? Would be, I'm actually looking for the issue because I was looking at it today. Wolverine 147. I believe that's the issue. I colored that. It has Wolverine and Angel on the cover. It's an orange cover with Wolverine and Angel fighting each other. And I think that was Tom Tenney was the cover artist on that. And then the interiors was done by, I want to say, Luke Ross was the one who did the interiors. I had that issue today.
It's Roger Cruz. They're both Brazilian.
It was Roger Cruz? Okay.
Yeah.
Because it was from the studio where they work out from together, and they're very similar in art styles.
Mm-hmm.
See.
Here's the series that my friends and I self-published in. First one was 1997. We did an anthology, 4 issues of Kansas Thunder. 1, 2, 3, 4, and then 2 issues of Delia Charm. I finished up my story. So I still have tons of these.
Red Menace Comics.
Red Menace Comics.
The Grand Comics database lists the 3 issues of Kansas Thunder, but only as a scan for number 2. But number 1 is indexed. And Delia Charm only lists 1 issue, which has both a cover and an index.
Mm-hmm. Somebody must have indexed them. But yeah, I'll have to do that one day, but I haven't.
Uh-huh.
But yeah, these my friend Ed, who distributed more of these than Diamond did. He used them to get a lot of work over the year in the early 2000s, especially. He'd just hand them out. Yeah.
But here it is: Delia Chase, 24 pages. Script Jared Osborne, pencils Jared Osborne, inks Jared Osborne, letters Jared Osborne. Produced and directed. Then The Romantics, Ancient Peoples Part 3 by Ed Murr.
Yep.
And the back cover by Ed Murr as well.
Tim Smith did a back cover of one of mine.
Kansas, yeah.
I
So
think
they
you should
have,
see
yeah.
it.
So they have an index for number one. Okay, so you did Charm. You wrote the romantics for Ed to Draw.
I
You
did.
did Organics.
Yep.
Ethereal by Keith Karchner and John Bly. Gear Fisher by Keith Karchner and Ed Murr, inked by you. And
Yep.
Ed, you did the cover, and Ed Murr did the back cover.
Mm-hmm.
You get to finish adding all of that because
Yeah.
it's here. Those things that had limited distribution, sometimes they have the series like 5 issues. Only 3 are listed, and
Right.
but only issue number 1 is indexed or something like that.
Yeah.
So they would need updates on everything.
I'll have to update it one of these days.
Do you know how to add stuff to the Rin Comics database?
I never have, but I'm sure you sign up and fill stuff out.
Yeah, you do. Yeah, it's not that hard. It's
Right.
there's a way to properly add stuff, but it's not
Right.
hard to get to. At least compared to thiscogs.com, where people insist that they want to add everything their own way. Yeah. And even 15 years ago, when I was adding stuff, I figured out no, there are rules for this.
Wilson, do you have anything he would find hunting in the back issue bins?
Oh, I mentioned it before when you were looking for your book. Is
Okay.
what you could probably find easily is Wolverine 147.
There we go. Wolverine 147. Was the
Yeah.
color digital by that point, he asks?
No, this was the coloring was digital at that point, but when I colored this issue, I colored it on. I did color guides for this. I do
Mhm.
remember actually physically doing color guides for this. This probably is one of the last set of books that were colored by hand before we switched over to computer. But I clearly remember doing the color guides for these. And then there's like a couple of pages that were redone only because they were flashback pages, and we were so close to printing that I wasn't aware that this was going to be a flashback. So somebody else, these two boxes is my artwork. I do not know who colored the rest of this interiors of those 2 particular pages. Again, it's one of those weird things that we work so close to printing that I don't even know if they credit the colorist. No, they did not. So they only have my name in here, but I do know at least two pages were not colored by me. It was changed in the middle of it, and again, it was one of those things. But what I did like that they did in this issue was the color holds on Angel's wings.
Yeah, let me zoom in so we can see.
And what a color hold is that they removed the black line. Originally, they were drawn in, but they removed the line on his wings and on his hair. And I basically just indicated what was there to make it look like it was glowing. And here's one with his whole body.
Hold on, let me get you back again.
Sure. Here's a page where his whole body is color hold. And again, that was just something you indicated when you create the color guides. I think this book I may still have 1 or 2 pages, but the rest of them I sold years ago. I may even have the proofs for them that were marked up. I may still have those somewhere. But yeah, this one is an easy one to find on the racks. I don't think much was going on, and I don't think it's a key. Other than it does have a Greg Schiegel Fastlane insert.
Oh, let's see that. Hold on. Look at that. I just got my latest Greg Schiegel newsletter email.
Oh yeah, I haven't read it yet, but I've received mine as well.
Fastlane, the bane of collectors for about 4 months.
Interrupting all their stories.
Completely interrupting it, but It's in here.
Don't do
And
drugs
then-
because drugs are bad. Okay.
Mhm. Exactly.
That's
So
funny.
I would say this one you should be able to find.
Yeah. This Gatsby cover, I couldn't tell what it was when I first saw it.
Hey,
Is it a
look,
reflection in a tin cup or oh, it's a car reflection.
It's a
The
reflection
light
in a headlight.
in the headlight from the cars back then. Yeah.
Hmm.
I
Not-
first
not-
thought it might have been a tin cup.
Yeah, not my favorite of.
Oh, looks like we lost him. I guess it wasn't his favorite. And so it was a
So
close up
you-
on you, Pablo.
there's a close up on me.
It kicked
Oh,
What
okay.
was
me
the
out.
close up on me?
I don't know. It just went right to Pablo.
It kicked me right out. No, what was weird about this issue? Well, first of all, there's what I would call the climactic scene in Gatsby is when the one character Tom and Gatsby kind of have it out. They have a big argument that ends up with a big argument at the end with a big confrontation. And like because this really is meant to be made as a graphic novel, they actually split that scene up in two. So we get like the second half of that scene in this issue. It kind of comes in the middle of the argument. But the weird thing is, this artist draws very lush scenery. And he's very good at drawing this sort of architectural stuff. But when they do this argument scene, I guess to try and make it, I don't know what their thinking was. They have them all on like single colored backgrounds. I guess it was to kind of isolate the two, but it was like, this is the one page I liked when he was kind of zooming in on Tom while making Gatsby smaller. That worked for me. But these other pages with the blank backgrounds,
This looks rushed.
yeah, but
'Cause he-
only. But
Yeah,
but
but
as soon
you
as,
have to have backgrounds on a couple of.
but as soon as you get past that scene, there's these lush background pages that makes me go,
Yeah,
"What?" I mean, plenty of background work on these. It made me go, why wasn't there on these?
Yeah, but it was probably rushed. That's the only explanation I can find. Because if you want to do some set up a scene in which some of the panels don't have backgrounds, you do it for balance. This one
Right.
has backgrounds, this one does not, because now we're showcasing the characters. But like this, you have an entire.
I don't think it was rushed. I think it was a creative decision for some reason.
Yeah, but that's not how you do it.
I know. I don't think it was good. I don't think it was a good creative decision, but I think it was a
How
creative
dare
decision.
you read that book?
That's what editors should be there for.
I just wonder because like the opening page when there's plenty of backgrounds here. It's for the next 3 pages that they drop them out.
Mm-hmm.
But they kind of change the angles, and there's a nice little piece of her with her fumbling for her cigarettes. That's good, but and this kind of page was okay with them changing side, but really it kind of lost the thread of it, especially with I know the text to it. We see these 3 captions on the black. That's where we kind of come the end of that scene. That scene, as that big climactic scene ends, we get all of a sudden we get a little sort of epiphany scene with Nick, who's the narrator, he gets asked a question. He goes, "Huh, I just realized it's my birthday." It's like, it's my 30th birthday. Then he goes into this, the text goes into this little, it's maybe, a few paragraphs about how he's depressed that he's turning 30 because, and there's about 3 or 4 paragraphs of him expressing how turning 30 is depressing him after you just went through this depressing scene with Tom and Gatsby. And they only printed like one of the 4 paragraphs here. And I'm like, why? Why didn't they just, because that was kind of an important point that all of a sudden, like I said, he just went through this whole thing. He just witnessed this huge argument, which they wouldn't want him leave for. And then he was like, oh, my, after the argument is when he was like, you know what? It's my birthday. I just had to go through that terrible thing on my birthday. That pretends terrible things to come. And it was like, and he went through, like I said, and I was just like, that's one of those they have plenty of room. It's not like there was anything else but a black panel. Could have added 2 more captions and given us the round. That just distracted me because I know the text well.
Yeah, I'm not gonna blame the artist on that one.
Even that's not the artist.
Whoever's doing the adaptation, does not know how to deconstruct the scene in a 3-dimensional space in a way that it describes the scene for the artist to draw. And I know it's not easy. There's a newspaper. There's a collection that's additional sales on with a newspaper that we've been having, which are sort of like Classics Illustrated. The collection was originally made in France, but there was a decision to have a couple of Portuguese important literary books in the collection. So the people who were editing the series for the newspapers here in Portugal, they had to come up with 2 new albums. So they mentioned it was not an easy process trying to adapt a novel, which is originally 180 something pages, and try to turn it into a 48-page story, especially when one of the writers was notorious for being overly verbose on environment descriptions. In fact, one of those books we have to study it for 10th grade Portuguese, and the thing that all of us from in high school remember, the first chapter is nothing but a very thorough description of the entire house, room by room, item by item, and it's we usually make fun of it, saying it looks like that's the best Remax ad ever. But of course, if you want to do an adaptation for the comics, no matter how, even if it was an in-joke to do a page like that, it's actually useless for narrative terms when you translate it into a visual medium.
Right. I would actually like to see, because one of the problems with comics sometimes is that, and especially for something like this, like an adaptation of Gatsby, is this, in a lot of ways, an issue of a comic is really a first draft, because there's not a lot of time to change the artwork.
Right.
So it's like you're limited. So it was like, I would like to see, after they, like, if they were to finish this whole book, they go back and do another draft of it, where they probably wouldn't have to change more than 10% of the artwork, I would say. Just they'd probably finish it and go, oh, I wish I could change this. I wish I could change that. I wish I could change this. Now that I see, and I'd like to see that done for once. I think for Gatsby, it would be interesting to see it done, because I think that's that's one of the limitations of comics, is you don't have a lot of time to draw it.
Mm-hmm. It's that old thing. If you reprint the story when you do the trade paperback, should you fix the mistakes? You should.
Yeah. I think if you're gonna make it, and for something like Gatsby, I think it's even different than like a regular monthly comic.
Mm-hmm.
Like that's supposed to be a graphic novel, so you could go back and do a second draft of it.
Mm-hmm.
Good evening, sleepy reader. Jared, is that the same adaptation comic that followed The Maid for no reason for a page? I remember remembering wrong. What was a recent Great G pickup? Yeah, I've been buying. This is issue 6. I've been buying it all along. It's the only. Well, I bought this is the only one with individual issues that are. I've got a few Great Gatsby graphic novels from the last couple of years. But see, I'm okay with like stuff like following the maid for no reason for a page, because if there's narration going on, if there's, I'm okay with choices like that. Like one of them I complained about like a month ago was a guy who changed Fitzgerald's text. That was the biggest gripe. That was like, you don't do that. You don't rewrite Fitzgerald in your graphic because nobody else does. I actually think The Great Gatsby lends itself to comics pretty darn well. There's lots of dialogue and narration in it. That lends itself to comics, which are all about dialogue and narration. So it's like you don't have to rewrite Fitzgerald at all. It's not like a Conan graphic novel where you're making something new out of it. It's different. But yeah, I think in a couple of weeks, the modern hip LGBTQ Gatsby comes out. I got that one on my pull list too. That modernizes it. Can't wait to see what they do with that. Once again, that's not going to be Fitzgerald's, text. I'm okay with that.
But they're not going to call it Gatsby, are they?
They're calling it Gatsby.
Okay, yeah, no. Okay, it's okay if you do something that
not the Great Gatsby, just Gatsby.
Right, but
one
one thing is if you follow the beats of the original story,
we'll see what they do. I have no idea. I mean, I'm not going to judge it until I read it, but I'm okay with them making something new out of it. I'm perfectly fine with that. But if you're going to adapt Gatsby, don't rewrite Fitzgerald. If you're going to rewrite Fitzgerald, make a whole new thing out of it. That's okay with me. But I don't even know if the new one's going to rewrite it. We'll have to see. Who knows?
There was a modern version movie adaptation of the Three Musketeers that had Orlando Bloom in it.
Oh, I remember that.
And they tried to make it into some sort of Elizabethan punk thing. Because it doesn't work. The Three Musketeers was published in France in the late 19th century, but the story is set on the 17th. So you shouldn't have technology that would be modern by 17th century standards, even if it's 19th century technology. And all the characters act very nonsensical. James Corden was in it too, of course, which his mere presence ruins everything. You don't have to do a straight adaptation of the Three Musketeers if you don't want to, but you shouldn't call it the Three Musketeers, and you shouldn't try to cram stuff into the story beats that don't make any sense.
Let's see. Don't forget to put that crazy party animal mushroom guy in yours, Jared. Mushroom guy is the key to it all. I actually started, let's see, where are they? Adapting some of my weird little drawings into full illustrations. Like, I don't have mushroom guy done, but I've got bulb on her head woman. I made, this was one of my little, I'm kind of tired of the literal illustrations I'm making. So I'm making some sort of, like, she's one of the women at the party, not Gilda Gray's understudy, it turns out. So it's like, I took this drawing I made and said, I can color that and adapt it into a full color illustration. And, so I've been doing things like that, though I haven't gotten back to Mushroom Guy just yet. But I might. I was thinking about that. But I get tired of literal after a while. Like, I need some non-literal illustrations, which is really weird for illustrations. Not weird for art. It's weird for illustrations. What does
But-
Sleepy here say? If someone is the writer of an adaptation, the temptation is to rewrite. Yeah, so they actually contributed something. Must be great. Yeah, listen, I've got like 3 or 4 adaptations of Gatsby. Maybe this is the 5th, and only one rewrote Fitzgerald.
Mm-hmm.
So I have to imagine the temptation isn't great to rewrite him.
Well, if you're a writer, yeah, you have to have some sort of ego, no matter how much you downplay it, or if you're the type of guy who stays hidden in the room, but you like to know that it's yours. But when you're working on an adaptation, nobody's going to remember that you adapted it.
Yeah, you mentioned, just popped into my head, the Gearfisher story that my friend Keith wrote. I actually ended up adapting that in that comic in terms of it's in one of these Kansas Thunder ones that my friend Keith wrote a short story, not for a comic, called The Gearfisher. And Ed, my friend Ed, wanted to adapt it for our Kansas Thunder book. So Keith said, sure. So Ed took it and adapted it. But the problem was that Ed had sort of a Marvel method idea in his head. That's sort of his idea of making comics. He's the artist, the writer gives him the script, and he adapts it his way. He puts his stamp on it. That's what the artist does. Well, especially at the time we were all younger. Keith ended up, he didn't want to tell Ed, but he didn't like what Ed did. I think Keith's story was too precious to him because it really had some autobiographical elements in it too. And he was just like, I don't know what to do. I can't adapt this. I can't write. I was like, give it to me. So I took all of Ed's pages and I took Keith's actual story and I ended up adapting. I ended up changing the order of a couple of Ed's pages too. And I just took Keith's story, used his, I didn't rewrite anything, just maybe some connecting word, and of, or whatever, just some connecting words. And I ended up, adapting, making the words and the pictures go together. And Keith ended up really liking it. He was like, wow, that really came up. But he, like I said, he couldn't do it. He was just like, because the story was too precious. But that's one of the few things I adapted. But I didn't see myself as the writer. I was just making the words fit the pictures, which is kind of, I think, what Gatsby writers should be doing too. Mm-hmm.
There's a lot of adaptations in the French market lately, and sometimes I don't know if they're actually doing a good job because I haven't read the original story. Although on some occasions I do, but I tend more to look at the visuals than if they're changing any text, especially because if the original story was written in English and the final product is in French, it is going to end up different. Just because translating is sometimes a tough job. So imagine if you're translating and adapting at the same time.
Wow. Speaking of, I got a European comic.
All right.
Sarah Lone.
Mm-hmm.
A little disappointing in the size. You can see how much smaller it is. This is the back.
Yeah.
And I don't know if it was the size or not, but I had a hard time getting into it.
Oh no!
Look how it's. Let's see, how big is this? The actual art is 5 7/8 inches by 7 7/8 inches. Hold on, let me give that to you in centimeters because it's European. We got 15 centimeters by 20 centimeters.
Oh,
not very big.
Oh my god, that's even smaller than a regular comic. Why did they do that?
I don't know.
Yeah, man, this is normal format. It should be 11 by 8.
It's but who's doing this one? Sumerian. I just had such a such a hard time getting into it, possibly because I was having a hard time seeing it.
Mm. Yeah, especially I'm looking at the okay. So there's a lot of gray. Yeah, the way the coloring is done,
The color is very muted.
and it looks like you have a lot of panels per page.
A lot of panels per page, a lot of thin line, teeny tiny lettering, of course.
Yeah.
The size did not suit it.
Even in French, there's a lot of teeny tiny lettering. This should,
I like the cover, and what was weird was this one also had about 4 different covers. I picked the nude one, of course, because why not?
I just thought this is very interesting.
Yeah, it's by Eric Arnoux, Arnoux. Story art by David Morancho, Morancho. Translation Joanne Johnson.
Hello, what's this? Okay, so the writer has been published in. Oh, I have something that Eric Arnoux drew. He's writing that, but I have something that he drew.
Oh,
it's
okay.
a book. It's a book about Napoleon, the Napoleonic Wars. About
Nice.
half of the book is about the Battle of Austerlitz, and the second part is about the Battle of Waterloo.
Nice front. There was if it was bigger, I may have been able to get into it. I don't know, but I just couldn't.
What was the cover price on that?
$6. I think it was about 40 pages.
Yeah, Eric Arnoux is not a young man.
Let's see. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12. So that's 24, 48 pages.
Okay, the artist is Spanish, and
Are the inside covers printed?
No.
No?
They're white.
So that was most likely a deal on printing it at that size.
Yeah.
So that had to be. That was probably not mass printed.
Yeah. I know there's a print on demand places that don't
that's what
print
I'm thinking.
If this is print on demand, it's really good print on demand. I must say it's nice. I know print on demand has gotten better and better over the years, but this is about this is good. Good. I have no problem with the quality of this as a book.
Right. So I'm guessing that there was a deal somewhere along the line that's why they printed it that small. They might have gone with a printer that doesn't do comic books per se, but does books, and they were able to get that many done. And again, I could only tell because the fact that they didn't print on the inside covers.
Yeah, that's a weird thing. A lot of print on demand places print on the inside. I don't know what that is that they don't print on the inside cover.
It might just be the machines are not made for it, because since that's going to be a different color stock, the printing on the inside cost more.
That comic is for ants.
So
I made a Zoolander reference a couple weeks ago. No one in my family had seen Zoolander. I'm like, come on.
Aw, that's messed up. When you say a really good pun or a really good reference and nobody gets it.
Yeah. Sumerian has done a bunch of smaller comics. Yeah, I've seen them. I've seen, people on YouTube. I think Sleepy has shown some all. That's the first one I bought of theirs. And I think there was another one that kind of scared me off because it looked small. But I don't know. The cover of that one just got me. So
here's something that's strange. Eric Arnoux wrote that, but he's mostly known as an artist.
Yeah.
Yeah, and he's 66. So Timon van der Velde. Yeah, everything. All the credits I find here for art. It may be the first time he wrote something, which is odd considering his age.
Yeah.
So Sarah Lone isn't new. So the first album came out in France in 2013. Second one,
Yeah, I think someone said there's like 4 or 6 volumes of it.
4.
4 volumes of it.
Mm-hmm. And the artist David Morancho is mostly known as a storyboard artist for advertising agencies, although he was published in a few comics throughout the 80s and 90s, and then he came back more recently. He did a comic about Elvis back in 2008. You know, he's doing it.
Here we go. Arnaud used to pair with Lafitte. Lafitte? Laugh Eater. What is that?
Lafitte. Let's see.
Lafitte.
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 Lafitte. Where's La?
Lafitte.
Okay, Lafitte or Lafitte? I can find. Oh wait, this is not.
Lafitte. La Chic. Lafitte. Lafitte.
Which Lafitte? Can't find a Lafitte. Let me find a Lafitte.
Lafitte.
So I found the laser docs from that issue.
Oh,
so I don't think I have any more of the actual pages. So this is the book
just,
that I did.
I'm just joking with Paulo.
This is not his first written comic. Eric Arnoux wrote something from 2001 to 2005 called
those are the proofs from your that Wolverine comic?
Yeah.
And you can see here they have circled areas that they want to change.
Fontenot, 2000 ans d'histoire, André Jouillard, Perrichon, Pierre Koenig.
Do you have the whole book there?
Just about. I have to count the pages because they were not in order. And these were originally stapled with the artwork. Now, what happened is that I came in with issue 146. And from issue 146, I actually still have the guides to. But these were colored over faxed pencils.
Oh.
Because the book was running late.
The book was that late.
The book was that late. That here's one on a fax.
Oh, there we go. That's over the fax pencils?
So it's over the fax pages. So the fax would come in, and then... So I did about 3 pages of this book. Like I said, this is 146. And as a gift, I got the full 147 to color.
Paulo still didn't get the joke, though. He's all sad.
Oh no! I got the joke. Yeah. Yes. Right. Yeah. No, it's a Formula One. It's a Formula One joke.
Okay. It went past me altogether.
Another comic I got this week that was good by the unsung hero of comics, Charlie Adler.
Mm-hmm.
I would say he drew all those issues of Walking Dead and nobody ever mentions him. It's crazy. It's crazy how it's like no one ever says, wow, Charlie Adler did a really good job on all those issues of Walking Dead. Nobody. I don't know why he gets so forgotten.
Is he credited on the cover?
Yes, he is.
Oh, okay.
This actually might be the best Charlie Adler art I've seen. I really liked it. It's by Simon Spurrier's the writer, Charlie Adler, and Sophie Dodgson. Is she the colorist on this? Yeah, she's the colorist. Lettered by Jim Campbell. But, there's a little Mothman for you. A sort of supernatural story about this woman who wants to learn about... But the art was just terrific. Let me see if I can... The art, Adler's always been a good storyteller. And I just... In his art... It's actually reminded me a little of Sean Phillips. the way he's using white space for the lettering and things. Whereas, but I really liked this issue. I actually put this on my pull list, sight unseen, because I was like, I could use it because I like Charlie Adler's stuff. I think he did a terrific job on The Walking Dead, even though he gets no credit for it. So I was like, you know what, I'm going to get his next series, and I think this art is even like, maybe it's because of the color, is like a step up even from The Walking Dead, which I thought was terrific. So really like this first issue of Damn Them All. Damn them all to hell. Get your filthy paws off me, you damn dirty apes.
I'm still here on Beta Tech, and I found something very interesting that Eric Arnoux worked on in 1979.
Yeah.
So there was this French publisher. They were related to the French TV Guide, and they created a series of comics based on American cartoon shows. And Eric Arnoux drew an adaptation of Hanna-Barbera's Valley of the Dinosaurs.
Ha. Ha. Okay.
Back in 1979.
Valley of the Dinosaurs.
I like Dino Boy better.
Oh, and who was it? Danny Bulinati died, I heard.
Yep. Oh, the Goblin just said it in the
he
chat.
did?
Yep.
Well, look at that. Another artist passed away this week, Danny Bulinati. The artist for a ton of Captain Newfoundland. I knew him as, I think he inked a lot of the Grunwald's run on Captain America. He inked a bunch of that stuff. I can't remember who he was over.
Oh, but Bulinati's name was all over the place at Marvel in the 80s. He inked everything, I think.
He inked some Hulk stuff, too, over Sal Buscema,
yeah.
right?
Mm-hmm.
I used to see his name all the time in the 80s. I was sad to see he passed away. I always liked his inks. He was never sort of a favorite, but he was always good. I was always happy to see him inking the book.
Mm-hmm. He made Ron Lim Ron Lim look good.
He also inked a lot of Savage Swords, said Sleepy Reader. Okay.
Mm-hmm.
He made Ron Lim look good. Ron Lim, my criticism of Ron Lim in the sort of the early to mid 90s was he was a good artist. He was talented, but he became the guy, if you needed a book drawn over the weekend, Ron Lim could do it.
Yeah.
So when he became that guy, that's kind of all the work he got. So for a good 3 years, there was nothing but inferior Ron Lim stuff out there until he fell out of favor.
Unfortunately, once you fill that hole as being the person who's dependable to fix your book, who's dependable to get those pages done for you, you fall into that trap where you're only being called to do those rush things. Right. I got a lot of coloring done because I happened to be in the office on a Friday at 5:30, and it's like, we need 40 pages done by Monday. And it's like, all right, it's not going to look great, but it'll get done. Or it would be like, I will always be taking home 4 pages of a book, no matter what it was. Can you do these overnight? And it's like, and like I said before, when I showed you the artwork for the Wolverine 146, because I did those rush, I got 147 to do the whole book. Still a bit of a rush on those as well, because again, the book's running late. So sometimes you can make really good money on doing a few pages here and there. I knew inkers that did the same thing, and I even inked some pages just because there was something was always running late. And you pitch in and you help out. You get paid for it, of course, but you get put into that kind of a box of he's dependable for 4 pages overnight, but you don't get a full book later. Sometimes you do, sometimes you don't. And
they only think of you when it's an emergency. When there's plenty of time to get a book done, they don't think of you.
Yes. The worst thing
That's
an
the problem.
editor ever told me was, "Wow, you should be on a monthly book." It's like, I can't make that decision. You can. Let me get the book.
Was Danny Filipino? Not as far
Yeah.
as I knew. I mean, at least
He
I
was.
never lumped him in with those 70s Filipino guys, but I
Well,
knew him mostly in the 80s, his 80s
yeah,
stuff.
he was
Yep.
Filipino, but at the time I thought he was Italian.
Was he from the Philippines or was he American Filipino?
That I don't know.
Unfortunately, I don't know much
I
about
don't know
him
either.
at all. When you mentioned the name, it's like, oh yes, I remember the name, but I've never met him, and I'm sure I sent him artwork,
Yeah.
but he wasn't someone that was like always on my excuse me, was always on my mind. I still got this cough.
And Brendan McCarthy tweeted that he can no longer draw. His eyesight isn't good enough anymore. He was
that's
one of my
sad.
favorites from the 80s. He did a bunch of indie stuff in the 80s with who was it? Peter Milligan. That came over here. I think they're both British. Milligan and McCarthy. Strange Days, Paradox, these really brightly colored, weird indie superhero sort of books. And I think he along with Peter Milligan, he may have done some Vertigo stuff in the 90s too. But he was one of my favorites. But I haven't seen his work in a while, but he said something about, he tweeted this week and it got, passed around comic book world that Peter Milligan said he can no longer draw. He can still do some design stuff. But he said he can't see well enough to do the details in drawing. Artists losing their eyesight seems super tragic. It does.
Yeah.
It does.
Mm-hmm. The worst I heard about was Total Ben, right? Total Ben had no peripheral vision.
Well, Bob Wyacek, he can't see at all just about now.
Ouch.
Towards the end with Gene Colan, he only had 30% of his eyesight in one eye at one point. Even up to the end, he was drawing up to he could.
You know what?
He was able to see just a little pinpoint almost. I
didn't know that. And I saw him drawing at a con in I don't even remember what it was, 2006, 2007, who knows when. He was, I don't know what year he died, but it was, he was old. But I remember seeing him draw and all of a sudden his later work made a lot more sense to me because he was really over top of that drawing. And if you look at late Gene Colan drawing, it looks distorted. But then you realize he's looking at it a piece at a time. And if you look at it a piece at a time, it suddenly makes sense. You're like, oh, when you look at the whole thing overall, I'm always like, that looks weird and distorted. Well, that's because he can't see the whole thing overall.
Yeah.
But if you kind of look in close, you go, I can see what he's seeing now.
Even in the early 80s, he was drawing like that.
Even more so at the end. I mean, not very noticeable near the last 10 years of his life. Very noticeable.
When I first met him, he was having a lot of eye surgery being done. And I met him in the early 90s. And all through the years, his eyesight, unfortunately, was getting worse and worse. But he kept doing it until pretty much the end.
Yeah. Let's see. Another comic I got this week was from Scout. Ozza the Barbed. I liked the art on it. Liked the cover. Didn't like the comic very much. It was, I don't even remember. Nice art inside. It was one of these fantasy stories about a woman who has to save her people. I don't even remember. There was nothing new in it for me that grabbed me. But the artwork was very nice. But I'm not getting. I'll put it in my bought just for their covers section because I like that cover. But I don't need a second issue. And you know what's funny? Sleepy Reader had said there must have the earlier copies were error copies. There was no lettering printed in the second half of the book. He was like, "You
Really?
have lettering in the second half of the book?" I'm like, "Yeah." This doesn't say the second printing or anything, like, because usually when there's an error like that, they go back to press and replace the earlier copies. And they still, there's still this. I don't think this says second printing anywhere. And yeah, and the UPC is 111 first printing. So it's like they must have fixed it and gone. Like, how does the lettering drop out in half the book and no one notices?
A check mark was accidentally pressed somewhere. Because sometimes it could be something as simple as that.
Oh yeah, we know. So someone should have noticed.
Yeah, someone definitely should have noticed. For it to get that far,
Yeah,
that I would say a check mark was pressed at the printer.
Yeah, because in this era of digital proofs with no physical proofs, if something goes wrong between you approving the digital proof and that thing coming off the press.
Yep, that was again, something was checked off incorrectly somewhere at the printers. I would bet it was at the printers.
Sleepy Reader says, "I thought it was a mostly silent issue to Robbie told me on Twitter."
I tell you, those silent issues are just so funny. A great concept, great idea, but at the same time, the conspiracy in me is like they wanted to save money and not pay letterers that month. I'm surprised they didn't have a black and white month just to save money on the coloring.
Then we got the latest this month's Cerebus in Hell came out with a print run of only 1,415. I'm guessing there are not a lot of Salvador Dali fans out there who are
or Nat King Cole fans.
Salvador Dali parody cover. Because the print run can go up by 1,000 if it's a popular parody. If it's a Batman parody, the print run can go up. But a Salvador Dali parody? No.
Salvador Dali and Louis Armstrong.
Yeah.
That is fascinating. How is he picking what to homage?
I don't know.
I'm fascinated by that alone. Not fascinated enough to pick up an issue, mind you, but fascinated that he's doing it.
Yeah, this is definitely, it's all comic strips. And this was a pretty good issue. I mean, for me, it varies from issues because sometimes he's got themes, and this one like a surrealist theme.
Dave Sim should rename his publishing company from Aardvark Vanaheim to Comics for Philistines.
And I do like his approval as an authoritarian construct, approved Comics Code approval. But yeah. Oh, like here we go. Next issue, Batvark. That might sell a few more copies than Hello Dolly. And absolutely nothing by Keanu Reeves, it says on it. But like, I enjoy these. I don't expect everyone to.
Batvark. It's not only Bat, but also Berserker by Keanu Reeves' Berserker. Yeah, okay.
How is that a Dali cover? It's got a Salvador Dali in the corner box. Hold on. Let me. Because you need to see bigger Salvador Dali in the corner box.
Mm-hmm.
And the strips inside are and it's also an X-Men cover, right? That's some sort of
it's definitely parodying what looks like a Buscema type cover. Although Neil could have done those types of head covers as well, but I associate those more with Buscema.
Was that Frank Zappa with the weird sunglasses?
That's 1970s porn star Virgil. Virgil the poet from Dante's Inferno. He's a Greek poet too, right? There's Mexican wrestler mask Dante on the other side.
Now it
And
makes
Roy-
more sense.
Roy Lichtenstein CGC Cerebus girl. An art dealer Silver Cerebus.
Fascinating.
1970s porn star Virgil. The cover gave me a couple laughs.
Dave Sims' descent into madness.
Yep. Maybe his parodies are getting too complex for simple cover purchases. Definitely with that one.
Thus, his need to rebrand Comics
Yep.
for Philistines.
Like I said, the Batvark cover there is simple enough for cover collectors, but Hello Dolly certainly isn't. Featuring all your, what does it say under there? Featuring all your favorite Cerebus in Hell Surreal variant characters. Parodying surrealism is also another.
Have you found any new pop art covers?
No, I haven't. I still haven't got that one that it's on my wish list on mycomicshop.com, but I haven't bought any issues from there yet. But I forget where it was now, but haven't found any more new pop art. But I did finish another book just last week. What's her name? Edie Sedgwick's sister just came out with a book. Edie Sedgwick, for those who don't know, was an it girl from like 1965. She worked with Andy Warhol. If she was alive today, she'd be a social media star. She'd be a Kardashian or a Paris Hilton or any social media star you can think of. But in the 60s, she was an it girl star in Warhol's pop art scene in New York. And she came from a well-off family, but she had like a really weird background and had no way to make money, because if you were an it girl in the 60s, it wasn't easy to make money. She did some modeling for Vogue. She did some acting for Andy Warhol. She ended up ODing in like 1970 or something like that. So she died. I think she's in like the 28 club. But her sister, who is 10 years older than her, and really didn't know her that well, because as what happens when one sibling is 10 or 12 years older than the other, they don't always know each other like siblings who are a few years apart. But of course, she knows the background she came from. And I think she's like 80 now, her sister, and wrote a book about Edie Sedgwick and her sister and her perspective on her. And she kind of looked back. She like read all the articles on her from the time and all the books about, and kind of gave her perspective on her sister's lasting fame. Because, Edie Sedgwick is still famous. And, there's still things being written about. She's still sort of in the public eye all these years later. So it was and of course she was a huge pop art figure, which is why Wilson asked me if I found any more pop art comics, because I found some this summer as I was reading all about. This is my third book about Edie Sedgwick, Andy Warhol, and the pop art scene that I've read this year, never having read much about pop art before. So, but no, I still haven't found. That's the third one I found, but I haven't bought it yet. The first one being a Millie the Model annual. The second one being an issue of Laugh from Archie Comics, which reference and swipe a bunch of pop art stuff from I think they're both from '67 too.
Yeah, I think so. That's where I think pop art was merging with comics for a hot second.
Yeah.
Because I think Marvel started putting pop art on their covers for a short while as well.
A Marvel pop art production.
Yeah, because I believe they created a company under that under Marvel. So there
Oh no,
was a
they didn't create that company. That was some scam artist in I remember reading about this in
okay.
California who if we're talking about the same thing. Right about that time, there was some guy in California who licensed a bunch of Marvel stuff along with whatever else he could license, and like ran off with the money or something. Yeah, I don't. I've read the story about that like a couple years ago in a couple of different places, and I think he may have called it.
Okay.
It had something to do with pop art, the name and the thing, but it wasn't Marvel itself. It was Marvel licensing it to this guy who may have even advertised, with the Marvel name, of course. But Marvel never saw any money from it, and neither did the artists.
Oh, okay. Because I was under the
I-
impression that Marvel had branded Marvel pop art to be something, and it fizzled. So
no,
I
no,
wasn't aware of that.
yeah, that was not Marvel themselves. Marvel, yeah, Stan Lee thought the pop art on the cover would attract cool college kids into reading comics. Yeah. Well, I think it was already Marvel was already attracting cool college kids, so he was leaning into it.
Yeah.
But it didn't last very long. I wonder how many months that Marvel Pop Art Productions was around. How many comic books it ended up on?
I don't know. I had glanced it because it was called Productions. That's why I thought it was a new line that
Oh
they were
no,
attempting,
it was just a
and
quarter box.
it was just something like that. So I thought they were planning to do something with it, and
No.
maybe they got pushback that it wasn't pop art. So
I
who
always
knows?
liked you remember the DC Go-Go checks?
Yes,
What year was that? I don't remember. Sometime in the 60s. It was
that was.
after Marvel.
Yeah, it would have been during their own. I think their own Silver Age is when they
Yeah,
did
like
that.
mid to late 60s.
Late, but I think it was late because I almost associated with the 70s, and I think it's only because in the 70s when I saw bins of books, they had those, but I wasn't buying the books at the time. But I remember seeing those all over the place as like the back issues, but not in a comic book shop. But wherever places were selling comics, there would always be a box somewhere full of
Right.
older books. I remember those checks on it.
Didn't Marvel Pop Art happen while DC was? I don't know if it happened at the same time. We'll have to check Mike's newsstand site and see.
No, the pop art productions would have been around 64 or 65, and they did not last not even a full year.
Yeah, I don't think it was anywhere near a year. I think it was
Probably
months.
3 to 6 months, not more.
Yeah, I like calling Marvel Pop Art. Fit the curvy swiggle and crackle.
The
And
DC Go-Go checks 66, 67.
I like someone said, so I remember reading about the DC Go-Go checks recently, and they said something like DC originally put the Go-Go checks on as a way to stand out so people could, could recognize DC Comics in an instant. And they stopped doing it because people could recognize DC Comics in an instant.
So the checks worked too well.
Yes, because DC was kind of waning in popularity then, and I think that the checks helped them wane in popularity.
They had to go back to Purple Apes.
Yep.
That's what you got to do to sell comics.
But who was it? Dr. Silver Age, who was collecting? I think that was him.
Yeah.
He's a YouTuber he's been a few years ago. He was collecting all the DC Go-Go check stuff and showing them off whenever he got them.
It's
There's
kind
a
of
bunch of
cool
them.
to be able to collect small collections within a larger collection. I think that's why the Marvel 25th anniversary head
Yeah.
covers are popular now because
Right.
there's a limited run of those. There's only, I think, 28, I want to say, when the last time I actually counted them.
Yeah.
Because some people forget the Marvel Age one, which is the only one that prints a back. And you see the back of because it's, I believe it's Star Brand is on the cover. It's the main head. And on the back of it is the back of his head, but all the superheroes' backs are drawn in as well. I think John Romita was the one that did the border for the 25th anniversary one. And every issue is for that month of November. So it's the anniversary is this month when those books came out. And those are fascinating because you do see people trying to collect those. And it's like, I almost sure I have them all except for maybe the ones that are hard to find, which is Care Bears and Ewoks, because people weren't really paying attention to the Star Comics.
Sleepy Reed learned they were called go-go checks from Dr. Silver Age. I don't know if I remember if I learned that from him or not. I may have. I may not have. I have no memory of it. But I know I watched a lot of him buying go-go checks.
I remember people calling them just checks, not go-go.
Yeah, he maybe I did learn that from him. I don't remember. But you know what I noticed? I haven't met anyone besides myself, and I barely collect them, who's collected Marvel's 10th anniversary covers, the ones in the box. As it may be because no one knows they're Marvel's 10th anniversary covers, and there's a lot of them.
Right,
like
that's the thing, because that was
not a small. It's nearly a whole year's worth of Marvel comics.
Exactly, and it wasn't until I probably didn't know it was until you mentioned it to me.
Right.
A while back when we were telling the story from John Romita Sr.
Yeah, as far as I know, I'm the only one who's ever asked that question. Kogo love checks. But it's like I've collected those 10th anniversary covers over I haven't in years, but I used to just buy them if I saw them. I wasn't like seeking each one out and checking them off on a check. I'd always go look through. I was like, oh, I'm gonna buy some of these. I like the ones in the box. They look good.
I just happen to have them if I was buying that line,
right.
because I was slowly if I see back issues of books I was already buying, like the Iron Man is probably the one I forget who's on the cover, but there's an Iron Man one that I remember was like my very first back issue buy that I was able to find. I think it was 43 or something like that, or 34. Where it was like that was my oldest comic for a very long time because I was already buying Iron Man at the time, and I stumbled onto it somewhere and was like, oh wow, this is a back issue from the I think 60s or 70s, where it was like this would be my oldest book at the time, and this is in the early 80s when I was buying comic books.
Yeah. I would buy those I would buy the frame ones on books wasn't collecting. Yeah, I like those frame covers. I started reading comics when every Marvel comic had them, so very nostalgic. Yeah, that's when Comic Book Historians had some great interviews on his channel. I watched John Buscema comment. Yeah, he dropped them all in a day too.
Yeah,
one day there was like 25 interviews.
Yeah, I need to make time to watch those because they all, like you mentioned, they all just dropped. And it's like, oh wow, I gotta watch these.
Alex Grant hasn't put out a video in months. Even the podcast, I know actually thought the podcast was stopped because they weren't putting them in videos, but since I think there were 34 videos that they put out. So if they put one a week, they have material for almost an entire year.
Yeah, and people could watch them.
Yeah.
They talked about the go-go checks. Carmen told them to get rid of them.
And I want to say, 62 Lefty Blues, thank you for following me. I just got an email from my YouTube saying that he's now following me. So thank you for the subscribe.
Here was one I was glad I got the second issue of.
Old Dog
by Declan Shalvey. And I like his art. I picked up the first issue just because he did it, and he's writing it too. And I found the first issue to be a mess. There was like changes there was like, there was young old dog and old dog, changes in time. And I had a hard time following the narrative thread. At the end of it, I was just confused. And I went, I don't even want another issue of this. But then Final Order Cutoff came. I got the email, and I was like, I only got 3 books on my pull list this week. I may as well get another issue of Old Dog. So because it was such a slow week, and I liked this. This issue was very straightforward. It's an old dog. He's an old secret agent, spy, operator guy who's coming back working for some new people. And it's a typical story like that. It's not a story you haven't read before. There's some nuance and twists to it that are good. But like I said, I like his art. I like his storytelling. And with the straightforward plot of this issue, it really worked for me. So now I think I'm going to put this one on my pull list because like I said, it was his art that got me to buy issue 1. Matter of fact, I was trying to decide whether to put it on my pull list sight unseen or not, and I ended up not. But I think I put the Charlie Adler one sight unseen because he wasn't writing it, so I knew the writing would be okay. But yeah, good second issue. Gonna buy some more of it now. Huh. Jared, on slow weeks, why don't you go through the back issues of series you missed? Because I didn't miss anything. I go to the comic shop every week. If there's a series I want to buy, I buy it. So there's like almost no need for me to go through back. And if there's something I missed that I want to try out, it's easier to get the collected edition. So it's kind of like, that's why I almost never go through back issues, even on slow weeks, just because I always go through back issues and go, I have all the back issues I want. I have been going to the comic shop every week since 1975. Every 1970. Well, it was the newsstand before. Since 1976, I've been going every single week since I was 9 to 10 years old, right around then. So it's like I've had a pull list since I was 16 years old. So if I want a comic, I've gotten it new. And I have got tons of shelves full of collected editions and trade paperbacks. So if I want something old, I usually get the collected edition. So that's why I almost never go back issue hunting.
I go back issue hunting usually when I go to a con. That becomes my treat in the sense of I need to when I can get away from my table, then I would go. And now it's getting harder because not too many places are carrying back issues.
Yeah. Well, like I said, I spend $25 to $30 a week on new comics. I got no money for back issues either.
Yeah, I didn't either. There was a time when I had some more money. Occasionally, I would go through the back issue bins, but what I would pick up was when they put an old forgotten miniseries, 3 or 4 issues in the same bag.
Yeah,
and then okay, this is it's a full read. It's cheap. I can read this. If it's good, great, fine. If it's not, it wasn't that expensive.
right.
That's how I got. I once got an Elseworlds miniseries called Conjurers, where for some strange reason, not Blue Beetle, Ted Cord is the hero, because the science doesn't really exist because everybody has magic, but they live in the DC universe. And then they lose the magic, and Ted Cord, since he's an inventor, he has to come up with technological solutions for society. It was more fun. The premises would be interesting for a full series, but for a 3-issue miniseries, they did more fun. One of the main characters, the 2 of the main characters are Stanley and his monster. Yeah, but it's like they're the Vertigo version of them. It's not a Vertigo title, but it's like the Vertigo version of them. So Stanley is now 10, 12 years old, and the monster actually looks scary as a real monster. So
I was never into Elseworlds just because now I only read the earliest Elseworlds that were all like Batman and Superman. but I never got into it because I read a few of them back in the day, and they always, in the end, they always seemed to me to be the same as a regular story with different clothes.
Mostly, yes. The point of Elseworlds, especially if you're using Superman and Batman, well, it's Superman and Batman. You have to do it like that, like this, because they're Superman and Batman. The point of the Elseworlds is that if they existed in another time period, or in a DCU that doesn't have superheroes, they would still be the same character. So the point is that it's a bit like what if some characters can die, but the Batman and Superman have to behave like they are Batman and Superman.
Right. It was always like, here's a Batman story. There's Commissioner Gordon. There's the Joker. There's It's like everybody's still here as themselves. They're just wearing different clothes and using different tools. And it's like, I was always like, okay, that's not interesting enough for me. I know one like with Stanley and his monster. I'm sure that was a bit different because they could do different things with those characters.
There's one interesting one featuring Batman because it's not bad. He does put on an outfit, but the environment is so different that it almost doesn't look like a Batman story. So it's the good, the bad, the good, the bad. No, what was it?
The good, the bad, the bat.
No, the good, the bad, the good, the blue, the bad, the blue, and the gray, something like that. Because it's in a western town, and it's a couple of years after the end of the Civil War. Bruce Wayne is a gallant army officer. Robin is a young Native American boy, and Mark Twain is in there.
No Commissioner Gordon, but they got Mark Twain.
Yeah, exactly. And it's kind of fun because that was the time when they were going to make, since it had been a couple of years after Dark Knight Returns, Batman was brooding everywhere. But Bruce smiles a lot in that comic. So it's funny because of that.
And another comic I got this week is Luana Vecchio's Lovesick. I have no idea who Luana Vecchio is.
Name's Italian. Luana Vecchio.
Nice cover. Some nice artwork inside. But it was more like Ed Piskor's Red Room than anything else. It's like this weird bondage comic with murder, and I don't know what's going on.
Okay. So Luana Vecchio. She is Italian. I guess 30 years ago, she would have been published in Cannibal alongside Ranks. But if she wanted to get published in Italy,
a lot of cover.
They wouldn't let her. It's too extreme. And there are no major indie magazines in Italy anymore.
It was nice. I mean, I like her art. I just, just not my kind of story. I just, you know what? I don't understand bondage stories. That's all it comes down to. Not being a bondage person, I don't get the attraction. So bondage stories are all about people who get the attraction of bondage. And to me, it's just like, I don't get, because like this one, Red Room wasn't quite about Red Room was more exploitive. This is kind of exploitive, but less so. And what was that one by Sunspot or something? That guy with the Eastern European name, Stefan. Oh, he's done a lot of stuff for DC. Reykjavik? No, I'm saying Reykjavik. It's not
Stepan Shajic.
Stepan said he did something called Sunstone. Once again, it's about a bondage relationship between two women. I got the graphic novel of that, and once again, I'm just like, it's just not my thing. That's all there is
Mhm.
to it. If it's not your thing, it's tough to get interested in it.
Yeah. Even Milo Manara likes nudity more than corsets.
I like nudity. Nudity's fine.
Sure, I mean,
Sexual situations are fine. I'm okay with, one of my favorite little comic books. Hold on, let me show you this.
sure. I mean, erotic is in itself is interesting, but BDSM, I really never saw the attraction because
Gilbert, I got this. I don't know. Sometimes I think I showed this to you. Gilbert Hernandez, Gardens of Flesh, and this is Gilbert Hernandez adapting the Bible with hardcore sex. So there's hardcore sex and nudity in this, and I love it. I'm fascinated by the devil having sex with Eve. I'm just like I think this is great. But I don't get the bondage specific ones. They leave me behind.
well,
Gotham by Gaslight was the first one before it was called Elseworlds, right?
yeah.
I believe so.
It's hard to tie it up in the story if you don't get bondage. Get tied up in a story. Yeah, it's hard to get tied up in the story if you don't get bondage. Exactly. That's the problem with me. But, I'll stick it in my bought only for its covers section because I like that cover.
Yeah, I only get tied up if I don't get tied up.
You're not a fan of the early Wonder Woman stories, then?
Yet somehow I get the devil having sex with Eve. I don't know. Somehow that makes sense in my brain. But I still love R. Crumb's Genesis for biblical art. That is a masterwork. R. Crumb's Genesis. I remember when I first got that years ago. I was like, wow, this is just terrific. If you've never read it, it's just Robert Crumb doing a straight adaptation of the Book of Genesis, and it is really, really good.
Well, you have to treat the Book of Genesis like it's an original reading of Grimm's fairy tales.
It's amazing how good it is. I was blown away by that one. Blown away. Now here's some cheesecake art I do understand. Miss Meow, number 5. I call this one The Boy's Light. It takes place in this world where there's all these super mercenaries, they call them, super mercs. And they all have fans, and they, have public images and stuff like that, and they fight between each other. And Miss Meow is one of the leading ones. And there's some straightforward art and some cheesecake art. And it's fun. It's actually well done. I enjoy this one. The villain is named Catfight. There she is fighting in her lingerie outfit. Who does this one? The plot is by Murphy and Aaron Sparrow. The script is by Aaron Sparrow. Illustrated by Victor Serra. Colored by Gaston Zubalida. And lettered by Joel Rodriguez. Editing by Sparrow. I don't know who Sparrow. Actually,
Aaron Sparrow is a regular guest on Thinking Critical, the YouTube channel.
Okay. Well, dude, they're doing a good job. Like I said, I've been enjoying this one for 5 issues now. It's just kind of fun. It's not earth-shattering. Yeah. Being tied up is supposed to be liberating, according to the creator of Wonder Woman. Yeah, like people who are into it love it. I just don't get it. You can't get everything in this world. That's the way the world is. Everybody can't get everything. In an interview, Crumb said the guy who paid him to do Genesis asked would he keep going and do each book. Crumb said no. It took too long to do. He was through. I don't blame him.
Would you like a dad joke about BDSM? A conversation between a masochist and a sadist. Hit me. No. Hit me. No. Hit me. No.
You should become a Hernandez witness. Knock, knock. Have you read the porn Bible yet? Good evening, CJ Calvert Art.
Hello.
Hey, introduce yourself. I don't think we've met you before, but now
was
that
she
you're
here
here,
last week? I think I vaguely. I think she may have been here once before. I'm not 100% sure. But always nice to meet someone new. We love our regulars too, who we chat with every week.
Yeah, see if you can raise the number of people from 5 to 6.
We're at 8 right now, mister. Comics. We'll have an all Wolverine show. Oh, that reminded me. I was talking to Scott Koblish this week, and I might do. He's looking to get word out that he's, besides him having a new comic coming out in December, he's been doing those one-shot specials. He's got like a whole issue's worth of one of them on Heritage auctions for sale. So he might come on the channel and do a show just so he can plug the the Heritage. He's like, how do I get the word out to people that the auction is up? He's like, I have no idea. I'm like, we'll do an hour with you on the show. So if you guys want to, maybe one Saturday afternoon or something, I'll see when he's available. We can do a show where we interview Scott Koblish.
Talk to him. I'm all up for that.
Yeah. Or you can yell Comicsgate and try to get on Ethan Vince Kyver's show.
First time seeing you live. I did leave a comment earlier in the week. Thanks for the warm. Okay, I might have seen your name leaving a comment. Okay, glad to see you're live with us, and we always like to offer a warm welcome if we can. Sometimes I'm a little cold, but that's just my personality. And Mind the Comics says hello to CJ also. He's another one of our. In case Paulo is living. He's Portuguese. He's over there in Portugal, and so is Mind the Comics, right?
Yep, I live about 70 miles away from him.
Yeah.
And once a month on a particular Tuesday, we have our own Portuguese comics show.
Yeah.
Which some of the people here insist on visiting, and then they leave after 1 minute when they don't understand what we're talking about.
But I always wonder about that when I hear like someone whose English is their second language. I'm always like, I wonder what they say. I wonder what their personality is like in their own language. What are the different? It's like if I knew him in this language and this language, would I be able to see differences in the person? I just, not being a language person, I don't know because I only know English. So
have you tried watching Earl Grey's show with his German friends?
I have put it on before and turned it off after a minute. Because I don't understand German. What's going on?
If it doesn't have closed captions, I can't.
No, but you don't have them when it's live. The system probably can generate them after a while. But no, for another language, it has to be manually translated. Yeah. It generates closed captions in the language that it was broadcast in, but for another language, it has to be translated manually.
In 62 Lefty Blues, all you have to do is cover shipping, and I'll send you a set of these. You don't even, I have so many of them lying around that you'll be doing me a favor taking them. So if you want, just send me money to cover shipping, and I'll ship you out a set for anybody who wants them. Like I said, we got thousands of them printed up and sold hundreds. So, like I said, Ed Murr probably distributed more copies of them by hand than Diamond distributed. We also did it at the worst possible time to be selling an indie comic in the late 90s, but that was the time we had. So I always pop in just to see if I suddenly understand Portuguese.
If you understand Spanish and you concentrate, you can.
That's like my sister sometimes says, if we're watching a show with subtitles, she's like, once I start watching a show long enough in subtitles, I think I understand the language. And I'm like, you know what? Then you turn off the subtitles and you're like, oh.
No. Because you can read fast.
No, you're just watching anime and somebody else. Nani? That's the only thing you understand.
Earl Grey has caused me to spend money buying more books. Yeah.
Yep.
He's got a lot of stuff over there. A lot of stuff.
What I would like to do is try to introduce some of the Portuguese artists that we have to an English-speaking audience, because it would be easy for most of them to produce a book in English.
Mm-hmm.
Getting a translator here isn't that hard in case they need help.
Right.
Just getting tightened up, because one thing is that when we think we understand a language, there's a lot of people out here who think they speak English, but then you see some of the translations that they do, and no, dude, you need to get this run by a professional.
And sometimes like writing and speaking are two different things. I can remember, once again, my friend Ed, who I just mentioned. We went to college together, as well as worked at Marvel together. We've been friends all these years. He's another comic book guy. He's a comic book artist. And I can remember when he was writing his senior thesis at our college, which is just a couple of pages about the artwork you've produced, about your senior project. You write a couple of pages to go along with it so they can, archive it. And Ed he's a bright guy. He can talk with the best of them. He's college educated. We were at college. I saw the written thing he did, and it was like it was written by an 8th grader. And I'm looking at him. I'm like, what is this? Because there was some disconnect. I'm like, Ed, I've heard you talk about this stuff. This is not you talking about this stuff. Mm-hmm. I'm like, he was caught up in the idea of writing, which was somehow different from the use of language in writing was somehow different to him than just his use of language. And once he realized that, he wrote it nice and easy. But some people are like, they don't, it's like they all of a sudden get this, I don't know, they go back to their 8th grade English class with this sort of weird formal style of writing, because that's the last time they really wrote anything. They didn't, being in art school, you don't write a whole lot. So the person could speak English pretty well, but not be able to write it. But like I said, I think that's a mental block as much as any, because once Ed said, oh, I'll just, write down the words I say, it all made sense. And writing speech is also a different thing. Yeah. It's like when you're writing dialogue, you often have to say it out loud in order to see if it works or not. Twain did both. Yep. Writing and speaking. What's up, Comics Unlimited? The devil's number? 666. What is up? TGIF, everybody. Yes. Always fun on a Friday night to chat.
One thing I noticed, if I try to write fiction, it comes out so artificial.
And
they have another problem. I don't know how to create problems.
Since I'm used to incident.
Yeah, since I'm used to writing in an informative style.
Right.
I want to get to the point.
Right.
In fiction, you can't get to the point.
I haven't written fiction in a long time, but I'm about to end my 17th year of writing my blog. 1,000 words a week. Mostly the last 10 years has been all writing about my art, mostly, or writing about whatever. But that's 17 years, 1,000 words a week ends up being a lot of words.
Mm-hmm.
And I think Tit Goblin's the only one going back through them. And it's also funny looking back at stuff you've done, because of course I don't remember all the stuff. You can't remember 17 years worth of weekly writing. So sometimes I go back and I look at it and I'm like, oh, that's kind of interesting. I don't remember that at all. And sometimes you go back, like I was just writing something like this month or sometime this summer, and I'm like, I think I wrote about this subject before. So then I go back and search my blog and find something I wrote similar like 5 years ago. So then I reference it, of course. I'm like, oh, look at this. I found this I wrote 5 years ago. Could you see yourself translating comics, Paolo?
Yeah, I don't think it should be a problem. The problem with translating is not so much of the it's not so much as the medium you're translating for, it's the subject. Since I'm used to running about cars, I am sensitive to translators not knowing what they're translating, because there's specific lingo, not just technical formal, but there's a sort of inner slang that's associated with the language, with a particular language in a certain environment, and you have to know what that slang means as well. So if you're doing a translation, if you're translating a book about dinosaurs, and you don't know and you don't care about dinosaurs at all, it's going to sound superficial, and there's going to be translations that are going to be literal translations, and anybody reading it will understand that it's a literal translation, and so there it'll cause a mental block.
So what you're saying is it's real work.
It is real work.
Completely. Like you could,
yeah.
As you flipping through like YouTube videos, you can see where someone put the not the dialogue, but like the description through a filter, and it's not only reading robotic, the words are incorrect. It's like a literal translation that makes no sense unless you break down what the original language is that it came from, and then maybe you could put it together. I see this also with a lot of the books from Paper Cut are translated from French, and you can see where one portion would be it would be a translation, but it doesn't really make total sense. And there's always these little notes in the margin. Sorry, there's always be these little notes in the margin where it says it translates this way, but it should read that way, kind of a thing. And then eventually it'll slip through, and the editors will go through it and come back with like, here's the proper joke to say in this portion, and you can read it now. It's like, oh, okay. It was something that was almost regional, let alone even something that was countrywide. It's like, no, this only makes sense if he came from this one area. And things like that usually will pop up, and it could possibly slip through.
Mind the Comics has written a lot of fiction, but it's all in the technical law style.
That
you don't remind us of your blog enough on YouTube, Jared.
It's bullshit for the judge to read.
I have to remind people more. I've been going through about 70% of it so far. That's dedication. I got to say. I have lots of poetry unpublished. In 2020, I wrote over 100 poems. Not so much anymore. My style is very abstract. Okay. Unpublished. Pulling from real life experience and then mixing fiction into it helps me write more genuine or believable. All right.
Of course.
Interesting. I have to show you one thing I got this week. That's let's see what he says. I picked up Grant Morrison Doom Patrol on trade last week at WNC Comic Con. Over 5 volumes. Got them cheap. I love that run. The one thing I remember about reading that run is the woman who had every superpower until you thought of it. That amused me to no end.
That was amusing. What I noticed, I bought the first omnibus trade of Doom Patrol, and what I noticed is that Doom Patrol was the first comic where Grant Morrison tried to convince people of how smart he was. There's a lot of name dropping in there about obscure stuff that only he knows. And if he was not trying to sound so smart, Doom Patrol would have been an even more enjoyable read than Animal Man was, but it isn't. It's got some very interesting moments, like
It offended Paulo.
No, but if you know, Animal Man is not trying to sound smart. It just comes off as smart because it is.
Yeah.
Doom Patrol is trying to tell you how smart he is. And then on Invisibles, he finally did something that was smarter than usual. But he's not trying to. But he's more. I guess it's more. He was more confident when he came up with Invisibles. Because there's a lot of stuff there that's obscure, but he knows how to tie it into the story.
I think I've showed this before. These are essential oils. This year, I've taken up the habit to give my nose something to do while I'm drawing. As I take some of these essential oils that are scented and put them on the back of my hand. That way, when I'm drawing, my nose doesn't get bored. I don't know, just something I started doing this year. I find it interesting, because I'm always close to my hands, and sometimes I gotta go wash my hands, because it's like got something on your hand. And something like this year, I was like, you know what? I should put something on the back of my hands as I'm drawing here, because they're always near my face, near my nose. So I started using essential oils sometimes. Well, this week I found, and I bought this because of the artwork. This is True Self Deodorant.
Very good artwork.
Wait, is that one of those weird Chinese translations?
Yes. And it's I guess in like Japan and China, they have solid perfume. And I think this is aimed at teenage girls. It's got these cool little tins with this nice artwork on it. And you slide it open, and there's like solid perfume in there that you rub your finger on, and then rub on the back of my hand. But
that's really cool.
I just thought it was $10. I mean, it smells like cheap perfume. There's this whole, if you translate it, there's this whole undertone, overtone, first tone, and it's like it just smells sweet. It's like I think it's aimed at teenage girls. But I just really liked I just thought the package was cool. So I'm like, I'm gonna spend $10 on that. I think I got it on Amazon just to try putting on the back of my. But like I said, I thought the art was cool.
That is cool. I like that.
Yeah.
And I feel better. I don't know why, but I feel better of putting that on than the oils.
The essential oils?
Because I know that those usually you put them onto like a little thing and you light them up and whatnot. At least with the other ones, it's meant to go on your skin.
These ones can go on your skin.
Oh, they can. Okay.
Because it turns out there's essential oils that can't go on your skin.
Ah, okay.
For my birthday this year, Daisy bought, since she finds it amusing that I've been using the essential oils, bought me some essential oils, about 5 of them, I think. And the first time I tried one, I'm like, that's burning. That's burning. And I'm washing my hands, and the burning's not stopping. And I'm like, I'm washing my hands 3 or 4 times. It's still burning.
Wow.
So finally I got it to stop, and I'm looking at it. It says, "Do not put on skin." I'm like, oh, okay.
See, that's what I would be worried about.
So you got to make sure you get the ones that you can use on your skin. That's essential.
I'm going to be right back. I'm going to get a refill of some water.
Mm-hmm. Let's see, what else do I have? The Return of the Chilling Adventure in Sorcery. With Madam Satan. What year did she come out? You looked it up. 41, was it?
Yeah, 41 or 42.
I've been enjoying these horror Archie stories. It's again just a couple of short stories. And some of them weren't even stories. They were just like meanness. Like there was one story here. Oh, this is it. This is a story about Veronica, who it's like Halloween time, and she's looking for a vintage dress in a in Dress to Kill is the name of it. She's looking for a vintage dress. There it is, in like an antique store. And then after she gets the vintage dress, she starts acting evil. And so and like she stabs Jughead. And then like Archie and Betty are like, we've got to see what's happening. We've got to go back to that vintage store and stop her. And they go to the vintage store, and the woman's like, no, this isn't an evil vintage store. She's just evil. Look, she keeps bringing me these organs in jars. I didn't ask for these. So it turns out it's not the dress at all. Veronica's just evil. That one made me laugh. It's just like, what? That's not even a story. But it was funny. And there's stuff like that in here that's amusing me to know. Amuse me. But I now have this is like my fourth or fifth horror Archie. So I now have an Archie horror section. I love that idea, Jared. It's a good one. That's very cool. You can buy anything in New York. Jared, your recent New York walkthrough reminded me that there's a few areas in New York City that look similar to my city, only bigger, like a Scooby-Doo background loop of my two downtown streets. Yeah, I published a video of me walking from 34th Street down to 14th Street. Takes about 18 minutes, I think.
Traffic was less chaotic than I imagined it would be.
It all depends. Yeah, it wasn't that was at like 1:30 in the afternoon too. So it was not. But I actually have one I want to publish now that I did when it was dark out. So that should be.
I almost thought at one point when you were passing FIT, you were going to point to the building that Valiant used to be in. It's like, I know that street. I know exactly what street he's going down. Were you walking with the camera like that, or did you have it in your pocket?
No, I was walking holding it.
Holding it center? Okay.
Yeah, I was holding it. Just like this, trying to use my body as the shock absorber kind of thing. Just
okay.
To minimize the bounce.
Right, because I was curious on how, if it was on something or how were you keeping it from bouncing.
It's tough walking for 20 minutes like this down a New York City street.
There was one thing that I like to see. There were a lot of small businesses.
Yeah. Mm-hmm. On the walk, you mean?
Yeah. It's one idea that we make about that we have about the United States is that everything is a franchise.
Ah, okay. I see what you mean. Well, it is more. One of the very first blogs I ever wrote 17 years ago was about watching a movie from the 70s of New York City and how different it looked. And one of the differences was the 70s was still before everything was branded. Like there's a lot more branding in New York City now, i.e. stores, chains and stuff. There was like none of that in the 70s. Or almost none of that. So that was one of the first blogs I wrote 17 years ago, I remember. So,
do I think that's a trait for writers from the UK? No, it's a Morrison trait. Alan Moore is a guy that does he does a lot of research, and it comes off in his books. But he's not trying to sound smart. I think he just likes to find something cool, and he likes to show it. He just finds a lot of things cool, and he knows how to tie them all together. Morrison created all of his career trying to be a shadow of Alan Moore, and sometimes you notice it. Warren Ellis doesn't have that. I mean, Warren Ellis is a bit arrogant, but but he tries to make his characters look cooler than smarter.
Mm-hmm.
Alan Davis just likes fun stuff.
Huh. And
So it's
Tit Goblin's comment about a few areas looking like New York City. That's why it's like when they film in Canada, like in Vancouver, they go to the neighborhoods that look the most like New York.
Mhm.
And there's also certain neighborhoods they always go to in New York. They love Carroll Gardens in Brooklyn. I've seen my friend Ed, who I've mentioned. This is the third time I'm mentioning. He used to live in Carroll Gardens right across from Carroll Park. And it's this beautiful row of brownstones with a little like half block park across the street from it. So they love to shoot on that block because you get the park or you get the row of brownstones. And you have room. The park also gives you room to shoot the row of brownstones. So it's like that area that I've seen Carroll Gardens on like cop shows more than like any other neighborhood in New York. You guys read Enigma on Vertigo? 80 issue. I don't know if I ever read that, but I think I've seen it. I may have like a trade paperback of it that I've never read that someone gave me.
I've seen the trade paperback and didn't buy it. I thought about it. It was one of the books that I left for later, but I was never. Oh, this is one I must have. It might be a good read, but I just don't know.
Don't forget to set your clocks back tomorrow night when you go to bed. Oh, that's right. Now, here's what I want to know: is
in Europe, we were already on winter time.
The question is which way. I always hear people say I hate daylight savings time, and I'm like, no, you like daylight savings time. You like it being later, longer. They're like, oh, okay. So you don't like standard time. So I don't know if daylight savings time is going away or standard time is going. People can't decide which one they like. Remember the 5th of November. Dun, dun, dun. Only 2 more comics I got this week. Time Before Time. This is the one that's about the 2 people fleeing in time from the 2 time like criminal syndicates. And one of the things I like that this comic does is it gives you there's our 2 main characters, and there's a bunch of characters who surround them. And they occasionally take an issue or 2 and tell you the stories about the characters who surround them. Like this whole issue is about this woman who is the head of one of the time syndicates. So you have to picture 2 time syndicates like 200 years apart. They even are. They're not even in the same time. And they're both kind of control this underground criminal time travel. Most people don't know. And they fight with each other to control this. Imagine the neighborhood they're fighting over is time travel. Well, in the very first story arc, they're named the Union and the Syndicate. We find out this woman who's a member of the syndicate was really a double agent, and she was working for the Union. And she ends up getting killed, and the head of the syndicate thinks that our 2 lead characters killed her, but it wasn't really them. In this issue, we get the head of the syndicate, and we find out that woman who was killed in the first story arc was secretly her girlfriend. And so she's been really angry trying to find these guys. We get her story and the story of the girl all in one issue. Nice little, but it was just really good storytelling. Well done, wrapping up something from the early, telling us something we didn't know about an earlier part of the story. Happy birthday tomorrow.
Happy birthday to TG.
Well, I mean, in Europe, it's already midnight, so it's already the 5th.
All right.
So happy birthday.
Wishing you more turns around the sun, Tit. Have a good day. Thank you. A trip into the sun.
Do bring sunblock.
A sky burial into the sun. Let's see. The last one I got for the week, Creepshow number 2. I think I can't remember how many issues this is going to be. 4, 6, 5? I don't remember.
26?
I think there's a new TV show or something that it's tying into. So, but we get a David Lapham story. That was good. I love that, like, modern day horror stories. There's no twist in it anymore. There's no someone has to learn their lesson. And this one, an evil tree just grows in this girl's yard and kills everyone. And at the end, everything burns down and the tree starts growing again. Then what's this? This next one was about a cartoonist who wrote. It's kind of the story about the old cartoonist who made some character and who's now in movies, and never got any money for him. But his character talks to him, and this thug breaks in, wanting to know where all his money is, and it's just a weird one. But good. But I liked both stories this time. Well, there's 2 stories in issue 2. I think I liked all 4 stories, but the David Lapham story I think was my favorite of the 4. But there's another. I like anthologies, so I'll check it out. Does anyone celebrate Guy Fawkes Night?
I hate to break it to you, but Guy Fawkes was an actual terrorist. He's not supposed to be celebrated. It's not like they caught a revolutionary for freedom. No, Guy Fawkes wanted to turn England into a religious fascist state.
But people like that he was trying to blow up Parliament, so
Well, that would be funny to watch, I guess. But
and we got a good mask out of it, so.
Mm-hmm.
I think that's the thing. It's like, are we what are we supposed to remember about that day? What he tried to do, or that he was stopped?
I think we're supposed to remember. I think you're supposed to not blow up Parliament is what you're supposed to remember.
Well, it does go the gunpowder treason and plot.
Yeah.
It doesn't say the gunpowder liberation and plot.
Yeah. Remember, don't blow up Parliament. You'll come to a bad end if you do. But you can light off fireworks. That's cool.
There you go.
Well, it's the same reason people like Che Guevara. It's the same reason people like Che Guevara.
Yeah.
Because he's on the T-shirt.
Yeah. Yeah, they put Che Guevara on the T-shirt, then they put Guy Fawkes in a mask.
It's all about the marketing.
Yeah.
And it's easier to market you when you're dead and not trying to kill people.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
It doesn't matter, how good your motives are when you're actively trying to kill people. They have a hard time marketing you. I mean, not always, but usually.
But after you're dead, they can
do whatever they want.
Mm-hmm.
You don't matter anymore. That makes it easier.
You are just a trademark.
At that point, yep, way to make money.
Wow, I got a big pile of comics here that I gotta put away eventually.
Yeah, that's the reason why I switched entirely to collected editions. There will be no more pile of comics. There will be a pile of collected editions.
Listen, my plague is I got a pile of trade paperbacks. They're tough to get rid of. They're celebrating me and the comic book.
There you go.
I declare November 5th to be Tit Goblin Day.
We'll celebrate by putting on our True Self deodorant.
Mm-hmm. And I would drink some more whiskey, but I already ran out. I actually ran out. This was the last of my Jack Daniels from last Christmas.
What's good whiskey in Portugal? Not that I know what good whiskey is.
The one that sells best is Famous Grouse.
Famous
it's whiskey.
Okay.
It's not one. It's not one. If you gift one, it means two things. It means either two things. One, you don't know whiskey. Two, you don't really like the person you're gifting it to.
Yeah. Is Jack Daniels well known?
Most people don't really like bourbon.
All right.
I do enjoy bourbon occasionally. I prefer Irish whiskey. Either Jameson is cheaper on restaurants, but Bushmill is cheaper on supermarkets. So so I end up buying Bushmills for myself. If I have money, there's a great place in Lisbon that it's called Whiskey and Co. And it's like the comic shop of whiskey.
Ah. Are there homegrown Portuguese whiskeys?
Okay, I think there's a couple of them, but nobody cares.
Ah, all right.
No, and the funny thing is, I actually found once
You're
a
all the
whiskey
way.
nerd.
What was
A
that?
whiskey nerd. I found a whiskey nerd in the whiskey shop.
Ah, okay.
And I picked up a bottle of whiskey that I was going to give to my dad
Mhm.
for Christmas, and I can't even remember what it was, but I was looking it over. This looks nice. And when I brought it to the counter, there was this guy looking over stuff and trying to pick things that he wanted, and they had to be special editions,
Ah.
and that's and the person in the counter was the shop manager. Oh, do you want the box? And I was gonna say no because I didn't really care, but then the guy looks over at me. What's that? I want that. And they say, we only have one. We have more bottles, but we only have the box. Okay, put it in the box. I was gonna bring the box just so don't. Why are you being so nerdy about whiskey?
Paulo, I collected Scotch whiskey years back. Have about 50 bottles in a secret basement wall.
You can open them every once in a while for special occasions.
It's
your
to
birthday.
Get Paulo in your secret basement room. Hey, Paulo, I got some whiskey back here.
Yeah, I'll travel to Newfoundland, and just so I can find your secret whiskey basement. But crack open a bottle every once in a while. Have 2 or 3 glasses.
Have a good time. Come to the coast. Have a good time.
Mm-hmm. There was one Scotch whiskey that I used to like that I have a hard time finding. I don't know what happened to it. It was called Hedges and Butler. And when I started drinking whiskey, my dad was heavily into J&B, but it went down in quality a few years after. So the same thing's going to happen to Famous Grouse.
Where do you live, Titcovel? In case of world disaster, I know where to go. Do tell. What we need to do is get Chris's toy studio and Titgoblin's whiskey studio in the same place.
Mm-hmm.
For those of you who missed, check out the last 45 minutes of our show last week when Chris Geruso gave us a tour of the studio he shares with a few other artists that have endless amounts of toys in it. Oh, wow.
This is not an ad,
mm-hmm.
But here's the whiskey I've had last that I really enjoyed, only because of the event that I had it at.
Oh. Yeah, that's one people usually try not to open. Although they should, because it's really good.
Okay, so I'm not a huge whiskey fan, but what happened was I got to share this bottle with me and a couple of other artists and William Shatner because we were working on a project with him. And at this convention, it was a convention in Philadelphia, and we were all together, and the person, I guess you could say, who flew him out to be the guest of the show gifted him this bottle. And so he brought it to this dinner that we were all at because we were talking about what we were going to be talking about on stage. This was when we were working on a digital comic with him for his Man of War series. And so we were the artists who worked on it, and we were being on stage with him talking about the project. So at dinner, he was like, well, I was given this. Let's open it up and share it. And so we had shared the bottle. And this is a different book he wrote. That wasn't part of the Tech War series. It was part of the Man of War series that they were calling at the time. So we got to share this bottle, and at the end, it was like, all right, let's get going. It's like, I'm going to wrap this up and take it as a souvenir because, again, the bottle that I shared with William Shatner, and now every year open it up and take a little bit from it because there's not much left. But it was one of those things. It's like I have no proof at all because he didn't. I wasn't going to ask him to sign it, so it was like, so I ended up keeping the container and the bottle, and it's the only time I ever enjoyed whiskey because I'm not a whiskey drinker.
Wilson, that's good space whiskey.
There you go.
Yeah. I can't justify to myself buying a bottle. It's not cheap.
Yeah, I wouldn't be
Awesome
buying
story.
it. That's about all I have left.
Ah,
Yeah, the limit I've set for myself is bottle shouldn't be more than 3 or 4 times more expensive than a supermarket whiskey. Beyond that, yeah, and ultimately it gets to a point where the whiskey is too expensive for the difference in taste to be noticeable.
and you'll never find Tit Goblin's secret wall. Never.
But it's in a wall. There's the hint.
I will just have to go through all the walls in Newfoundland to find it.
On that note, we should say good evening. It's time to end our show again. Wow, 8:45 already. The night has flown by.
It did. Definitely did.
Hope you all had a good time. I know we did.
Definitely did. Thanks everybody for showing up. Once again, Tit Goblin, happy birthday.
Happy birthday.
Be back again next week.
All righty. Same bat
Take care,
time.
everybody.
Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.